All right. So I'm sure you're wondering, why are we here? But we're here to solve problems. Why is this your particular problem? Do you see something that is happening that you want to encourage? Do you see something that's happening that you want to provide a solution to? Why not? Everybody here has the power to start something, to build something, to provide that solution. And here we are helping build up and support people who are underrepresented in information security. We've also started just having lunch. So everybody was at DEF CON and was having lunch together, and we had some unique experiences of being women in the information security field. And it was like, wouldn't it be nice if there was a group of people who all had similarities and could share that and support one another? And it grew and grew and grew from the original people to more people and more people. And now we are even more inclusive of everybody who needs to find that other person that is like them to support and grow. And now we're going to find out how Metasploit started.
That's great. Thank you. So for a lot of groups, like myself and most of the groups that I'm part of are ones where I looked around and said, I want to do this thing and no one else is doing it. Well, what do? Well, you start your own thing, right? And, oftentimes it's just you and then maybe a couple of people, then you blink and all of a sudden it's 300. So it's pretty amazing how these things come together. Metasploit really started off as like a way to give researchers a voice against the really terrible pressure from vendors back in the early 2000s, where vendors were trying to get me fired from my job for publishing vulnerabilities. The Black Hats hated what I was doing because I was dumping exploits that they were using. So I got hate from all sides, basically. I'm like, you know what, screw y'all, I'm going to keep doing it anyways. And eventually I found my crew. I found my people who had the same ideals of making vulnerability disclosure boring, making exploits boring, just make them part of life and the tools we use every day. So that's really kind of got me into, building Metasploit. But along the way, I really found out it wasn't really just building an open source project. You're really building a really big community. And that was really the part that stayed, not necessarily the source code. So on that front, how do you actually build something? Well, the short version is you can call it a name, you can register a domain name, which whatever, everyone always registers the domain name first, right? That's why you've got 600 domain names. So step one, register the domain name. Step two, you actually have to build the thing. Well, you have to get people to show up to it. So you have to be loud, you have to be proud, you have to tell everyone about it. You have to be everywhere you go, annoying the crap out of your friends, telling them about this cool thing you're doing until they start telling their friends and annoying them too. So you really need to just kind of saturate your ecosphere of people so everyone knows exactly what you're doing, why you're doing it, and you can tell people who are also interested. And of course, going online as well helps.
And I mean, look, we're here. We're telling you about things. So kind of same idea, right? And yeah. So marketing is hard. But if you have friends who are good at that, they can help you out. Kind of like when you're doing your resume. Sometimes it's easier if you bounce that idea off of someone and you figure out, how do I explain this to you, and share it. What is it that when you explain this to someone that they don't understand? You want to make it very clear. What are you doing? Why are you doing it? And this is where style and polish matter. If you happen to be a nonprofit, Canva's free. And, they have nice branding things, so it'll look pretty. I know a lot of times we're like, substance matters, but I'm sure you've noticed in today's day and age, you have to catch everybody's attention first and bring them in. So they're like, oh, I do have this problem, or I do want to help out with this community. Because if they don't know you exist, how are they going to be able to do that? And there we go. Oh, I think I missed one here. All right, so how do you get people involved? And my answer is, looking around the room, I kidnap my friends. So that's where you can start. Yes. And you start there and you move on and make it obvious what you are doing and what you need. That's very important. If you don't make it obvious, people aren't necessarily going to help out with that.
Cool. Yeah, I'm kind of just saying, you need to remove as much friction as you can. You don't make it very easy for people to show up. So you can say, starting, next month, we're all going to meet up together at this pizza place. And all you have to do is show up. That's it. And later on, you can add more requirements, you can add rules, etc. But step one is get people there, remove friction to get kind of core mass going. But the rules are really important. The rules are really how you go from having just a rowdy bunch of drunks to actually having a fun, meeting or a productive community. And so the great thing is you don't have to, do it yourself. There's great, COCs you can steal. There's all kinds of awesome ones that are open source licenses. You can copy and say, we're going to use this community, code of conduct as well. So there's lots of great resources out there. You don't really have to start from scratch. There's already people who have great policies for how they run their meetings, how they run their events, etc. But yeah, the documentation. So telling people what to expect, tell people what the rules are. If you have an in-person meetup, what we do every meeting at AHA in Austin is we tell people what the rules are. We say you can't take photos, you can't record it, and if you're a jerk, we'll kick you out. And just start with that every single time, to people have it drilled in their heads that what's okay and what's not okay.
Anybody who came to opening, I basically was like, any photos you take, make sure that people in them know about them. So same kind of idea. All right. So give the community space. What does space mean? Well, we all learned during COVID that can be virtual, right? We probably all have 100 Slacks and Discords now. Yeah, that is definitely a great start. Sometimes it's actually easier to go old school and do a mailing list. So it depends. How frequent are you all going to be talking? What are you trying to communicate? What are you trying to share? And what is the group that you have started building? What are they most comfortable with? Try and meet them a balance of where they are and how much you need to communicate with them. So you've got a lot of variety there, but the important thing is consistency. So I'm going to every month email you. I'm going to every week post a question over here in this Discord. Also find out what everybody's thinking, encourage questions, run surveys. You are creating a community. It's no longer about you. It's about what is it we all collectively want to do. And you can't find that out unless you do surveys, which, reminder, we have surveys for the event.
So there's two tricks to that too. It's one is, even if no one's responding, you keep doing it anyways. You keep telling people every month what's going on. You have the meeting even if 2 people show up. And two is, if you want to get people to interact, there's 2 ways to do it. One is you ask them questions and then find someone who's willing to respond. And 2 is you have someone else post the wrong answer, and that will get everyone to respond.
Oh my goodness. Absolutely. So making your community look good, be positive. We actually have a rule. We've got a stated how you talk for Diana Initiative, and it is always about positivity. And in addition to positivity, it's about consistency of message. So we talk about, we want everyone who is underrepresented to come hang out, do things. Wherever possible, write up examples. It's kind of hard sometimes to resonate with something until you are like, oh, that does sound like me. Oh, that does sound like a problem I have. Let me get together with this group and solve that problem. Also, statistics can be handy, especially if you're, applying for sponsorship or things like that in the future. It's like, how many people showed up? How often are you meeting? How many people show up to these meetings?
Yep. And, I don't have a whole lot to say on that besides, yes, like the more stats you have, the more you can justify sponsorships, the more you can justify space, the easier it is to get a meeting space from like a bar or restaurant, because you can say at least 10 people buy pizza this month. So all really good stuff.
And then I think,
sorry. Oh, yeah. So it's also helpful is telling everyone what you're planning to do. So don't just say like, here's what we're doing. Tell them what you plan to do the rest of the year. Like, so on one hand, you have to kind of like ignore the fact that you are where you are and it's just you in a dark room at 3 a.m. trying to get something going. Instead, pretend that you've been running this thing for 10 years. And it's 10 years later. What would you do? How would you describe it? How would you talk about it? Talk about that now. Talk like it right that second. Like, use the royal we. Talk about your massive organization. Like, you kind of need to get ahead of your skis a little bit and convince people that you are bigger than you are, and then grow into that message, because that's going to it's going to give people more confidence that, one, you know what you're doing, and two, you know where you're going. So getting into the frame of talking about we, talking about the organization, talking about kind of your big plans, even when it's just you by yourself, is really important.
Also, negative case scenarios. What is it that we are not doing? And do you maybe know who you can refer them to? So we are not currently supporting a particular group, but hey, for example, this morning, hey, do you do anything for under 18s? No, not specifically, but there's DC Next Gen. And if you're staying for DEF CON, you can go get projects and activities from them. So if you know where you want to go, you say, this is what we're doing, this is who we're including, and hey, we actually are aware of these other things, so when you bring it up, I can refer you to this other project or community or group. And now, iteration.
This is the fun part, because you're going to start off and you get it horribly wrong. You're going to have a forum no one likes, you're going to have a product no one wants, you're going to have a meeting format that no one's really excited about. You just try something different, and you keep trying it, and you don't beat yourself over it. You just keep trying stuff till it sticks. For one of the meetups I did in town, we went about 6 years where the same 5 people showed up until we finally got critical mass. Then now we're at 100 something people every month, but it took a very long time to get there. You just keep doing it, keep changing a little bit, keep changing the venues, the timing, the place, the people, the talks, the rules, and eventually you find something that everyone really resonates with.
Some of you may remember we used to happen later in the week, and we got a lot of conflict with people who wanted to attend Black Hat. So we ended up moving earlier to the week, and that worked out much better for us. And, this year maybe that changed slightly due to some circumstances, but hey, iteration. We kept changing things up. We found bigger venues. We found smaller venues. We found venues that were a lot more expensive, and venues were a lot less expensive, like this one, and had really good food. I think we can all say yay for the food today. And so I have definitely made mistakes. I have picked wrong things. I have, decided we were going to get the 20-foot U-Haul and then had to back that into a loading dock. Like, there are choices that you make and then you never make again. So, all right, look for the helpers. Again, kidnap your friends, make them show up and do things. And also, if somebody comes in and says, hey, I want to help. If you have something you're currently working on, suggest that. There are people who are going to be there, they might be shy, who want to help you out. But we're in information security, so everybody knows, start with least privilege, right? So start them out like, oh, hey, you want to start with this? Could you help me with the documentation for this? Let's go over this together, and you can write it up. Let people work their way up within the organization, so this way, if something does happen, you haven't, given away all of the keys to the kingdom, because bad stuff can happen.
Yeah, if you need evidence of the contrary there's the XZUtils backdoor last year, right? That went on 2.5 years of slowly building up a case before the backdoor is injected. So folks are patient, especially if there's a way to target your community or get what they want out of it.
Yep. All right. So this one is find an existing group. Like I said, with the DC Next Gen example, there may be a group that already exists. Now, it may be geographically different. So you may be able to become buddies. Hey, what are you doing over there? I want to replicate this over here. On the other hand, you should probably look to not duplicate what people are doing in your area. It certainly does happen. And once groups get to a certain size, you may need more. But it's a lot easier to focus on a specific problem with a specific group than trying to solve everything. You may be passionate about many things, but what is the one thing that you're passionate about that either you can fix that problem and you don't see it fixed locally, or you see it fixed somewhere else, and maybe you can borrow some ideas from them and do it in your area.
Yeah, there's lots of ways to work with other groups. An example, again, in Austin, we've got a bunch of different, sort of competing hacker groups, but we're never on the same day. We're never the same night. We're never really the same people. There's some overlap, but it's not necessarily, the same thing. The people who want to just go hang out and watch, chat and eat pizza, go to one thing. The folks who want to do lightning style, Fight Club style, go to a different thing. And it's okay to have those things. Just coordinate with other groups. Make sure you're not antagonistic with each other, and you're able to kind of round out to support the entire community, not just one facet of it.
All right, get involved. Start asking around. Hey, you. This is my social media person for B-Sides Edmonton. Can you help me document this? How do we figure this out? How do we get it out of my brain? How do I afford a social media platform? Oh, hey, friend who also runs a nonprofit in a completely different industry. Canva's free for nonprofits? Awesome. Put it on your LinkedIn, put it on your Twitter, put it on your Blue Sky. You have made friends over the years, or at least acquaintances at conferences. They may know an answer, and they are probably willing to share that with you. If you don't say it out loud, nobody can help you. And if you are passionate about something, people will help you with that.
So now this goes back a little bit to the finding helpers and also getting involved yourself. It's okay to volunteer for something, realize it's not what you want to do, and say, sorry, never mind. And the faster you can say that, the better. You don't want somebody waiting on you. You don't want the guilt of saying, well, I committed to this thing and now I don't want to do it, or I can't do it, or my time's not letting me do it. So the quicker you can say, yeah, sorry, I'm going to throw that one back, that's okay. That's totally fine. Project and community organizers understand that. They would rather hear, sorry, I can't help, than you said you did this 3 weeks ago and now I'm kind of depending on it, sorry, what can you do about that, right? So it's totally fine to say, I will not do this thing after taking a look at it. The turning around and noping is great.
100%. And take a chance. Try something new. I did sales, not my jam. I am currently doing sales for Diana Initiative via recruiting sponsors. You will learn a new skill. You could translate that skill into your day job. That would be awesome. Or you could find out, no, that is not the career path for me. Stay away from that with a 10-foot pole. It's up to you what you're willing to try, but this is kind of a safe place to give it a try. But again, be clear. Hey, I've never done this before. I'm going to give this a try. I need to nope out now. This is no longer something I can do. It's no longer I feel comfortable with doing this. So next step is planning for the future.
So if you succeed, you start the thing and people actually show up to it and it gets big enough that you start having, big project problems. That's when it starts getting interesting. Like you need to figure out like what's going to happen when you get sick of the project. What's going to happen if you just literally get sick and disappear for a month? Like what if you are out of town or you take a job or your company gets acquired and you have to fly to Prague twice a month, things like that. So there's many things that can happen to you where it will disrupt your ability to help manage these groups. So it's great to have like a deputy or 2 or 3 that can help out, then jump in. But again, you have to be really careful. These are not folks that are going to treat your community poorly, otherwise, do bad things, make it what you don't want. So what if you can do to kind of like document how you like the project being run? If you're not able to do it, the better. You can say, our core values are X, and you can hand that to somebody and be like, hey, I'm going to be out of town for the next 2 months, but as long as you follow these core values, you can't go too wrong. So the more you can do to document that and be really clear with how you want things to be run from a value standpoint, not from a like how you run the meeting, right? You don't want to be that specific. You do want to be very clear about here's how we treat people, here's how we accept things, here's how we deal with conflict. That's all the really important part.
Yeah, the vibes. The events I run have very different vibes, but I think that each event kind of knows where the vibes are. This event is kind of the chill. Hopefully you're all getting the chill, friendly, happy vibe. Oh, yeah, good. Whereas maybe Sky Talks is a little rougher and angrier. So anybody coming to B-Sides, like feel free to check out Sky Talks, but it's a little more, edgy. And that's okay. We've made it clear. Sky Talks is for this particular atmosphere and TDI is for this particular atmosphere. And everybody then knows what they're getting into. And we can hand it off. Like, because Sky Talks is happening right now and TDI is happening right now, half the crew's in one place, half the crew's in the other, and they're doing their thing and we're doing our thing, and we have our values, and so everybody's running the event the way that it ought to be run.
So when you're looking at making a change to the project, you say like, I need to step out. You have to make some hard decisions. Like, are you going to kill the project? Are you going to just let it die and say, sorry, the next project is going to have to pick a different name or pick a different something and come back from scratch? Are you looking at, finding someone else who can take over for it? Like whether it's a company, whether it's a group. And keep in mind, even if you get a corporate sponsor, like companies die all the time too. Like I had to go through this horrible process last 6 months of getting an Eventbrite meetup taken away from another company that had fallen under because they wouldn't update the page, and yet I was running the meeting, and it was really frustrating. So that stuff happens all the time. You have to come up with your plan for how to deal with things when the original ownership goes away. So values will help with quite a lot of it, but also having trying to figure out like what are the criteria for keeping the name or keeping the entity as is, and where does it make more sense literally to wind it down and start something new.
And so speaking of starting something new, sometimes you have to be a new company. So for anybody who knows, the original name was TerraCon, and it transitioned to Diana Initiative. So you sometimes need to make sure that when you're either transferring to a new company or creating a new company, that you've got a plan for that and how that is going to roll over and be handled, and protect yourself from someone taking over or, maybe doing things with a project that you don't want done.
Yeah, for sure. So we're going to talk about some of the things you can use to protect the project for sure. But yeah, just be really clear, like there are a lot of bad actors out there. There's folks who would like to abuse your community for all kinds of reasons, who probably don't have the best interest in heart one way or another. They have a temporary urge to be the leader that month and you'll never see them again. That's pretty common. You all see folks who just get a power trip out of it, then don't want to do the work. So, it kind of takes a special kind of masochist to want to run these events because you're not getting paid for it and it's taking up all your time and you don't sleep anymore. So, yeah.
All right. So we talked about, how you're building this community and everything. All right. So you've got the community. What challenges are we going to have now that we've got the community? And you're going to have trolls. You're going to have people who flake. You are also going to have legal responsibility. How do I deal with legal responsibility? If you have not played this game before, you have to have a LLC. And then the LLC becomes a 501c3 if you go that far. You have to have a trademark, and you have to protect that trademark so that nobody else can be using that word. Otherwise, if you don't protect it and somebody else takes it, they're going to be like, well, you let that person do it, so that's not really exclusively yours anymore. You need to pay lawyers money. You need to pay CPAs money. You need to pay registration fees to exist in Nevada. You need to pay taxes, even though you don't do anything taxable, but there's an annual tax fee. You will find all sorts of fun and exciting things. And honestly, it may make you understand some of the weird stuff they do at your day job a little bit better.
Yeah, it's actually a really good point about the day job. Like all the stuff I had to do with like Metasploit, create the LLC, do the trademarks, do all the filings, do all the state and then central filings and all that junk. Like that was really great for me starting my next company. Like I started Run Zero. I'm like, oh, I know how to file a trademark. I know how to do the tax filing for this stuff. I know how to do Texas filings for these 5 different things. Like it's really good experience for when you want to start your next thing, whether it's a community organization or just a company. So for sure, like. The one thing, I mean, you mentioned trademarks, and she mentioned defending trademarks. What that means is if somebody uses the trademark without your permission, you have to go after them. And if you don't go after them, you lose the trademark. Like they're very much a enforce it or you don't have it anymore kind of problem. So you're currently seeing Oracle being sued over the JavaScript trademark because they're not actually enforcing it. And so they've effectively abandoned the trademark to the generic word JavaScript, right? But I mean, it's very clear that if someone was taking your name and if, let's say, you just don't pay attention to them, you're like, yeah, whatever, not a big deal, you've lost your trademark by doing so. You'll actually lose your ability to defend it. That means somebody else could start the Adion initiative next door and start taking your people, or start Metasploit up and just call it Metasploit too. So the trademark really is the only thing you have with teeth, especially when you're like a small nonprofit or a small open source community.
And I mean, that gets into why do you see everybody sit on every single social media handle and every single like variation of the URL? It's so that nobody can snipe it and start using it for something and then claim it later. And like I said, we originally changed from TRCon to Diana Initiative. And so we had that experience of like, we talked about you want to be a group. Have you thought about what happens if I can't log into the Twitter? Can somebody else log into the Twitter? What if somebody else logs into the Twitter? Can they maliciously like just do something with it? So there is a lot to consider. It's interesting, and you will find ways to solve those problems. Please don't let it be a spreadsheet.
Someday, like no one will care more than you. Like you may spend all your nights, all your weekends on this thing, and you care about more than anything else. And the second most involved person will care very little, and that's just the truth of it. Another kind of hard truth I can point to, look at any open source project that is written by somebody whose name you can recall, right? Go look at the GitHub tracker to see who's actually doing the work. And what you'll see is like 95% of the commits are that one person, and then a long tail of everything else, mostly dependable afterwards, and not a lot in between. So we think of all these projects as being like, these multi-user huge communities, but there's technically only a few people doing all the heavy lifting on this stuff. And so when you keep in mind, like if that person decides they don't want to do it anymore, good luck getting the project going. It's just not going to survive without that type of, someone carrying the weight the full time. So none of this stuff will make you money. Like even with Metasploit, right? We had this great brand name. It eventually sold to Rapid7. There's no money in any of that crap. Like the money we made was doing training classes at Black Hat during when I was on PTO. I would take vacation to go do training at Black Hat so that I can actually get money to fund the company and to fund like the domains and all the fun stuff we did there. So with Rapid7 acquisition, there was really almost no money buying Metasploit itself. The money I made was basically building a commercial product afterwards, after it had already gone to Rapid7. So it's kind of a different world out there. You're not going to just magically make money because your project's successful, but you can use it as a stepping stone to bigger things later on.
And yeah, so if you have this project, think about, who else is involved, and, not only like what happens if you suddenly get sick, but what happens if you just get sick of it and want to retire. So that is the hard part. All right, now we get into conflicts. So whether you are doing open source and somebody has a particular opinion about things, my day job is open source, and people definitely have thoughts and they want to share them with you in nice and unnice ways. And then also when you run a diversity-based conference, people have thoughts and they want to share them with you in nice and unnice ways. You have to think about, how are we going to engage with that? Are we going to have a frequently asked question? Are we going to be able to give a standard static response? Are we going to kind of give everybody the benefit of the doubt? Are they genuinely asking this question? But after you give them the benefit of the doubt, there's a certain point for your own well-being and time management. You just need to stop feeding the trolls. It is worth it to just not engage, block and move on. I know a lot of people are anti-blocking, but in a lot of cases, sometimes that is just how you need to handle that. We have a code of conduct team here. They luckily are who I can hand things off to. And we have had each year probably 1 or 2 incidents that I've had to give them, and they've had to have a process. And we have worked on improving that process, borrowing it from other B-Sides events and other events that we attend or help organize. And that kind of makes it a little bit easier. That applies in the virtual space and the physical space. So whether this is going to be a GitHub comment, whether this is going to be a Discord comment, you should have the same thing. Treat everyone with respect. And if you can't, maybe we're not going to let you comment anymore.
I mean, one thing that Nicole mentioned is you want to give everyone like the benefit of the doubt at least once, though. Like, especially with Metasploit, we dealt with a lot of folks or met with a lot of folks who are international. English was not their first language. Like, they weren't really sure how to communicate things. But if they're the jerk the 3rd and 4th time, they were like, oh, you're just a jerk. I don't care what language you speak. Like, at that point, you're just not a nice person. So you definitely get a feel for it, especially if you start running an event for a while. You start noticing some people just like to talk all the time, but then are really just there to blow their own horn and not help out. And you just start to give those people the microphone less often until they go away because they realize you're not going to feed them. Oh, yeah. So I can tell you, like, for Metasploit, it was every night, every weekend, every day for almost 15 years straight. The first 6 years with nobody else's really help. I had a couple team members that contributed, but they weren't doing like project releases or QA or testing or builds or domain stuff. They were just like writing a feature here and there and saying, okay, have fun each team. Like, okay, crap, I guess I can get a build out today. Like, it's one of the things where you just don't really get a lot of help and you really have to run it like a full-time job. So there's, if you want to practice your being able to run a separate company on the side, it's a great way to do that. But it is a lot of work. And I can only imagine you probably have better examples by than I do today.
So it is definitely a additional job. And like we said, it's practice for if you do want to have your own side job because you figured out how to do the trademarks and everything. But I think for a specific example, I arrived in Vegas on the 27th, and I think I've had 3 hours of sleep or less each night since then. It's an adventure. It's not that anything particular needs complex work. Sometimes it's just you have to do the boring work. You have to literally lift up boxes of 135 table covers and carry them up and down a set of stairs in Las Vegas in the heat at 9 o'clock in the morning. Like that's the thing. So all the purple tablecloths, you're welcome.
So what a lot of folks say, well, hey, I'm running this project and it's costing me money out of my pocket. Like, who's going to pay me back? The good news is nobody is. Like, that's the good news, is telling yourself early on, like, you're not going to get bailed out by some company, some sponsor, especially not early on. If you don't have stats on your number of users, you don't have impact of what you're doing, it's out of your pocket. Like, you are going to be covering your own costs for a very long time. So the challenge is, like, how do you go about actually, once you get big enough that you can start justifying sponsorship, how do you go about actually raising money for your organization? And starting from the the open source side, in terms of how you want to raise money, there's lots of bad models, right? Like the SSPL is arguably a failed model. You decided to take open source code and make it no longer open source and then charge people to use it certain ways. Like, yeah, you just did whatever you did, but don't call it open source anymore, guys. Like, that's not open source anymore. You've kind of screwed the spirit of it in the process of doing that. So the better ways to do it are things like having like open source support retainers. There's a gentleman named Filippo Lassara who does an awesome job of running a open source support company, mostly the Go cryptographic backend. And what he'll do is you pay him some dollars a month and you have him on a retainer. You have any problem with any of the Go code that you use and he knows about, he'll hop on and help you out. And if you don't have any problems a month, you pay him anyways. And it's great. You don't have to worry about doing daily billing, hourly billing, etc. That model's actually worked out really well. Other examples are often like a hosted turnkey solution. That's the more common in open source. If you have some kind of cool project, you can say, now you can have the cloud version where you don't have to run it yourself and you pay us some money. Hard part with that, of course, is then you compete against all the major cloud providers for doing the same thing but cheaper. So that one's a little bit harder to pull off. And then lastly, when you talk about commercializing a product, there's a few ways to do it. Where a lot of folks do is they call it open core and then they build things around that core, but that's been really hard to successfully commercialize without doing a major license change. So that we've seen folks like Splunk, Elasticsearch, Redis, et cetera, all move away from open core for that reason. So what I like to recommend is the opposite. Go build a totally separate product that happens to use your open source code, but is a different thing from scratch. It is a different UI, it's a different user base, it's different everything. So with Metasploit, for example, we built Metasploit Pro, a totally different web-based version of the product that didn't work anything like like the open source version. And if you could use open source version, do all things, great, use that. But if you wanted something to actually like, click, 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 boom shells, like we made that for you and we charge you money for it. And that's the way that we got around doing that. So the challenge is you don't really get to sell your open source code again. You don't get to take the thing you've already done and get paid for it. You have to go build something new. And that is the hard part for a lot of folks. You don't just magically get paid for what you've already done.
If only, yeah. I worked at GitLab, which did the open core thing, and yeah, it's hecka hard. Now, on the other hand, if you're running a company, go look at the handbook for GitLab because it's completely open source and you can borrow everything from them. Makes your life easy. All right, so what hasn't worked? At various nonprofits that I have helped run, which run from hackerspaces to this to others, Kickstarters tend not to really work because those tend to be for a really big bang thing, not like a monthly meetup or an annual meetup or things like that. On the other hand, what has worked for us is going and asking companies like, hey, can you sponsor us? Can you show up and meet our people? And we had this many people attend. So thank you for everyone who answered the optional questions. I appreciate you. You have no idea. And I've looked for grants. Again, it's going to be the same material. Who attends? How many people? What are they learning? We have gotten grants, and that's how we do like the neurodivergent dinner and the neurodivergent quiet room at DEF CON. We have also got groups that do membership fees. So if any of you are familiar with Women's Cyber Jitsu, WESIS, WOSEC, they do membership fees, and in return, you obviously get things, but those membership fees allow them to invest that money and get speakers and, do online webinars and everything. So depending what you're trying to accomplish, I know everyone hates subscriptions, but as a nonprofit, the monthly subscription model really is very useful because you can predict your income and you can kind of manage your expenses a little bit better. So, any questions?
I have a question. So, first of all, thank you. Really great presentation. Learned a lot. I wanted to ask, what's your thoughts on people squatting on like URLs and social handles and don't do anything with them for years?
I'll start, and I have very mixed feelings. I am squatting on a lot of domains that I have ideas for. I have many ideas, and I just don't have the time to implement them all. But I do eventually let them lapse, and I try and give the community a chance. Like I had ShellCon. I was like, sure, let's have ShipCon. And I was like, let's do it on a boat. And so I had that for a while. And I was like, does anyone want this? I'll give it to you for free. And nobody wanted it, so I just let it lapse. On the other hand, B-Sides Edmonton, you have to go to bsidesedmonton.org because there's a casino on bsidesedmonton.com. So I do not have warm and fuzzy feelings about that one. So as I said, very mixed feelings. So if you have hope and you really do think you're going to work on it, go for it. But eventually, let it go.
Yeah, it's super tough. I mean, we basically have to hoard domains for the same reason. Part of it is if you've ever used the domain for any reason ever in the past, how do you know it's not being used still? It's the hardest part, right? You can do DNS sampling, you can do all kinds of other stuff. But as an example, my company changed our name from Rumble to Run Zero. And prior to then, we're actually looking at buying an old or start using a different name. The name was called Highbeam at the time. We're looking at rebranding to. We tried buying the domain for it, and they're like, yeah, we haven't used this in 15 years, but we're scared to death of giving to anybody. And we're like, hey, here's the thing. We're a security company. We'll actually run all the monitoring for you for 5 years as part of offering this. We'll tell you if we see a single DNS request, a single inbound email. We'll be like your partners to make sure this domain's not being abused at all. We got all the way to the very top echelon of this company, and they finally said, nope, not worth the risk. Sorry, even for a couple $100,000. So it's one of those things that like sometimes you just can never get a domain repurposed because there's too much risk in letting it go.
Any other questions? Shout loudly.
I can do that, no problem.
Perfect.
So you mentioned putting together a code of conduct for your community. As a big ugly white guy, is there a code of conduct that you could point to that would be inclusive and or a good starting point to?
So at the bottom of our code of conduct, it actually says exactly where we copied it from. So that was our starting point. It has deviated. I believe we now say like originated with or something. So it's no longer a direct copy. But Cheryl, correct me if I'm wrong. We pretty much copy pasted it to start, right? Yep. Copy pasted. Then we have iterated on there from that point. Any ideas on?
No, that's great. Steal it. I guess the question for y'all is who's about to start their own thing, whether it's a local meetup, whether it's some other events. Like, are you here because you want to hear about how to start stuff or how to get involved? Or awesome. What do you plan on doing?
So I wanted to figure out something to do with nonprofit called Cybersecurity with the local chapters, and eventually doing partnerships with like BGH or LISIS Houston. But the other issue is what you guys talked about earlier with sponsorships and funding. So that sounds like it's just going to come from Cybersecurity International until we are able to get a head count up and then go from there. But eventually doing something with DEFCON or B-Sides or any of the major conferences going on this week.
It's fantastic. Awesome. Looking forward to it.
Ask people. You're going to get told no, but just ask everyone for free stuff. Can we meet here for free? Can you donate us space? Can we show up at your local B-Sides? Can we show up at your local conference? Can we have free swag? Can we have free beer? You will get someone who's going to say yes. Just, it's practice. Yep.
Go to the local conference. My company does offer their space for meetups.
Yes, the people with offices, a lot of times, if it's going to be a weekend, you can have their space. You may have to get temporary event insurance, but.
Yeah.
Where are you located?
There you go. Come talk to me afterwards.
Oh, great.
Any other questions?
Yep.
So we're talking about building community, so this is kind of a sad part, but we have all been part of like community that's basically suddenly had to go defunct, disappeared, and it's nothing worse than being like, wait, where did you go, where did the information go? What are your recommendations or suggestions on if the community has to be closed, to be ended, how do you do it with the least trauma?
So we actually have absorbed a few other nonprofits in our existence. And we had a conversation with that group where they no longer could sustain themselves. So they basically looked for kind of like being acquired by another company, I would assume. They tried to find someone with similar values. And they were like, hey, we can no longer afford / have, the volunteer power to keep going. Can we kind of refer our community into your community? And we talked it out, and absolutely, we were like, we have similar values. This is going to work out. We will happily take all of your people and they will have a home here. It didn't go, I think, as smoothly as we hoped because everyone, some people did want to come over and some people didn't. So it wasn't like a copy pasta thing. But that was hopefully at least the least traumatic. The other thing is Wayback Machine, backing up as much as possible, because sometimes people really do just like to see what was it at this point in time. So documenting everything as it is now when things are starting to go downhill and making that available to members to back up on their own, making sure the Wayback Machine backs it up. GitHub is great for backing things up.
We covered it.
Yep. All right. Oh.
I have a question finding sponsorship. Do you just go talk to people like you said? Because my organization.
If you get anywhere near me, I'll ask you for money. That's really what it comes down to. So look for the head of marketing on LinkedIn. Look for the head of DEI, which doesn't exist anymore in companies because, the whatever. So just look for the head of sales. Look for the local salesperson. Show up at Black Hat, get a free expo pass, and then give your business card to every single person in the expo room. I do not have shame. Just go ask everyone. Someone will give you money. It won't be much, but you just... I do have a script, and it basically, I copy paste it, so I may not know it off the top of my head, but it basically is Diana Initiative is a group that is looking to support those underrepresented in information security. And in order to host our webinars and annual events, we need money. And here is a link to a document which contains, a list of all of the events that we held in the past year, what percentage of people who attended were different age levels, et cetera, et cetera. So you can see our demographics. And I would love to talk to you. Here's my phone number and email.
I would say from like the other side of that equation of getting pitches all the time, like you look for ones that are fitting your target audience. So, at Run Zero, we've got obviously CISOs are definitely in our bucket, but also people who work in security operations in general. So if you're having a cybersecurity group for, folks with diverse backgrounds, great. Like we'd love to get in front of them. This is a great set of people to be customers. So look for that. Look for people that look for groups and organizations that would be a fit for your members both ways. Like would they be interested in buying those products and services, but also would that company be interested in talking to those types of folks? And you can usually make the case really clearly, like, hey, you're just going to buy like beer and a pizza. It's like $500, and you'll get a great chance to put your name in front of all these people who have these great roles, or at least are becoming the next leaders in those roles if they aren't today.
Which there's a weird parallel. We had talked about volunteering earlier and being specific about like, hey, I saw that you said X. Can I help you with that? Same kind of idea. If you are very specific and say, I need someone to sponsor and cover coffee, you actually might have a list, and then they might come back with, actually I'm interested in doing whatever. Like we had JP Morgan Chase one year be like, actually we want to sponsor a workshop. And I'm like, yeah, sure, cool. But if you give somebody ideas, they can riff off of that.
A shortcut for that is look at the spam you already get for sponsorships and ask them to send you the prospectus and then just copy it. And you can use the salespeople against you to make your own list for your team. So effectively you get a prospectus which has, here's the different levels, here's what you get for the sponsorship, here's you just take one of those things you'll get from any of the people already spamming you all the time and just tune it up for your group, and there you go. So a great way to get started.
Also, I'm sure lots of people here know this about me. If you ask me for resources, I'll give them to you. I have a whole entire directory of how to run a conference, which includes a list of every example prospectus I've ever stolen off the internet. So again, copy what other people have if they didn't copyright it. It's yours now. Awesome. Thank you, everybody.